All right, today we're diving into something pretty fascinating. We're talking about what happens when you take the rock solid foundation of mainframe computing and smash it together with the absolute frontier of tech, AI agents. This combination, it could totally change how the world's most critical systems are managed. For real. So, what actually happens when you bring these two worlds together? I mean, we're not just talking about a simple software update here. This is a potential game changer, a whole new way of doing things. So let's break down exactly what that means. Okay, so first things first, let's look at how things work right now. You've got these huge enterprise systems, right? Well, they're usually broken up into these separate environments called sysplexes. The easiest way to think about them is like a bunch of individually managed islands. And to keep all these islands running smoothly, they've been relying on this one proactive feature for a long, long time. And that feature is called call home. It's a really critical part of what makes mainframes so reliable. So, if the system spots a potential hardware problem, like say a component is running just a little too hot, it sends out an alert. This gives the teams a heads up so they can schedule some maintenance before it turns into a real disaster. But here's the thing, you should really think of call home as just a hardware thermometer. It's fantastic at its one simple job, raising a flag when a specific number is hit. So yeah, it's proactive, which is great, but it's also really limited. It has no idea what the bigger picture looks like. And this is where the new frontier comes crashing in. So instead of just getting these simple little alerts, what if you could get way deeper insights? And even more important, what if you could get automated actions? Well, that's exactly the promise of the AI agent. This chart really spells it out, doesn't it? The old models, super narrow purpose. They just raise a flag. They're totally passive. But AI agents, they're context aware. They don't just sit there and raise a flag, they actually take action. They're moving from just simple predictions to making really complex decisions. They become an active part of managing the whole system. So what even is an AI agent? What are we really talking about? Well, at its core, it's an AI that runs on this really simple but super powerful cycle. First, it perceives what's going on around it. It takes in all the data. Then it uses that info to make an informed decision. And then, and this is the absolute key, it acts on that decision. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work? Let's, peel back the layers a bit and look at the anatomy of one of these agents to see what really makes it tick. And it basically boils down to two key things. The first piece of the puzzle, and you could argue it's the most important one, is its memory. This is the foundation of its intelligence. It's the source of everything it needs to make those smart decisions we were just talking about. Now, when we say memory, we're not just talking about a pile of raw data. It's actually made up of two different parts. First, you've got context. This gives the agent its why, like what's the big business goal it's supposed to be working toward. Then you pair that with knowledge, which is the what. All the system data it can get its hands on. Performance records, those call home alerts, all of it. So let's make that idea of context a little more real. A business might tell the agent, hey, your number one job is to minimize downtime, period. Or maybe the goal is to manage the total CPU usage across the whole ecosystem. Giving it this context is what stops the agent from just thinking in a straight line. It makes sure that whatever the agent does, it actually lines up with what the business really cares about. Okay, so the agent has its memory. It knows the why, and it has the what. But how does it actually do anything? Well, that brings us to the second key ingredient, its tools. These are all the things it can use to actually get the job done. And an agent's toolkit can be, pretty diverse. It might have a tool that's another AI model just for summarizing complex data. Or maybe it has a little sub-agent that's an expert at finding specific problems. It could have utilities to rebalance workloads between systems, or even just generate a report with recommendations for a human to look at. The point is, these tools are what turn a decision into a real action. So now that we know how these agents work, let's zoom out and look at the big picture. What's the real impact here? Well, it's all about moving away from managing these isolated silos and instead creating a system where everything works together, in sync across the entire environment. Think back to the old way, right? You have system programmers managing each one of these complex sysplexes all by themselves. They're looking at the performance of this one, the workload of that one at a time. I mean, it works, but it's kind of like trying to conduct an orchestra by only listening to one musician at a time. You just can't hear the whole song. The new way, though, It's a total game changer. An AI agent can look across all of the systems at the same time. It gets that holistic 30,000-foot view. It understands how each little part affects the whole big machine, and so it can make decisions that optimize the entire ecosystem, not just one little piece of it. Let me give you a perfect real-world example of this. It happens all the time. Imagine the main production system is getting slammed. It's under a heavy load, and it needs more power, right? So what's the typical solution? The development and test environments, they just get shut off. The developers get a message saying, sorry folks, you're out of luck today. But with an AI agent that has that big picture view, you get a much, much smarter solution. Instead of just flipping a blunt on-off switch, the agent can intelligently reduce the resources from the dev environment, not shut it down entirely, just scale it back. This frees up just enough power for production, but keeps everything else running. It's the difference between using a sledgehammer and a scalpel. And all of this brings us to what might be the most important benefit of all. Because this isn't just about making computer systems more efficient. It's really about changing the day-to-day work for the super skilled people who manage them. I mean, just think about it for a second. Right now, system programmers spend a huge amount of their time just sifting through mountains of performance data, trying to connect all the dots themselves. Well, an AI agent automates all of that tedious manual work. And this quote really gets to the heart of it. When you free up these experts from all that manual data crunching, they can, quote, spend the time doing more fun things like building up new systems or experimenting with new opportunities. That's the real goal. So, at the end of the day, the goal isn't just about squeezing out more productivity. It's about making the work itself better. It's about taking all those boring, repetitive tasks off the plates of our best people so they can focus on the cool stuff, innovation, creativity, and, hey, maybe even making their jobs a bit more fun. And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. We always talk about AI in terms of system performance, efficiency and speed. But what if the real goal, what if the true frontier we're pushing towards isn't just about building better systems, but about creating better, more fulfilling, and more creative work for the humans behind the machine?